Good evening. Tonight, fight against COVID-19 pandemic enters new phase as the country begins mass vaccination of its citizens tomorrow. Nigerian governors agreed to take COVID-19 vaccine as President Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo are to be inoculated publicly on Saturday. Governors of the northeast states resolved to adopt community policing as part of measures to tackle current security challenges in the region. An Italian government evokes European Union regulation, blocks export of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine shipment to Australia. Plus, you see sports, business and later international news from our London studios.
On business news tonight, oil prices jump by more than 5% as OPEC Plus agree to maintain current crude output policy till April.
On sports news tonight, the federal government renews its commitment to support the candidacy of Amaju Pinnick for the FIFA Council election holding next week in Rabat, Morocco.
And from Abuja, the chairman of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency laments state of the organization, describes staff morale as the weakest he has ever seen in the paramilitary organization.
2 days after receiving about 4 million AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, Nigeria will formally begin the vaccination exercise tomorrow, Friday, March the 5th. The Executive Director of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Dr. Faisal Shuaib, says government would kick off the exercise at the National Hospital, Abuja, where the frontline health workers there would be first set of people to be vaccinated. According to him, an improved percentage of 50% of Nigerians have indicated willingness to be vaccinated, while 25% remain hesitant. He insists that the vaccines would not be deployed to any state that has not fulfilled its preparedness criteria. Well, staying with the rollout of the vaccine, the Nigeria Governors Forum has agreed to take the COVID-19 vaccine along with their deputies when the rollout in states commence from March the 10th. Now, the governors say that they will also adopt the vaccine rollout guideline produced by the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, which prioritizes frontline health workers over other essential workers. They are, however, insisting on ensuring that the vaccines are safe and potent. According to the head of media at the NGF, Mr. Abdulrazak Bello Barkindo, the governors also commit to working with the federal government to set up more cold chain facilities in the states, as well as to make available the security of vaccines and personnel top priority. They made their comments at the end of the virtual meeting, which primarily focused on the inoculation of the vaccine. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari, Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, as well as the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, also Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, will be vaccinated publicly on Saturday to halt vaccine hesitancy in the country. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Mizuke, reports.
Discussions about the COVID-19 vaccination exercise is central at the continuation of the presidential briefings at the State House. The Executive Director of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Dr. Faisal Shuaib, announced that as part of strategies to curb vaccine hesitancy, the President and Vice President will publicly receive the first jabs.
Frontline health workers will be the first people to get the vaccine. After that, the plan is to vaccinate Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and strategic leaders on Saturday. Again, we're hopeful that when Nigerians see leaders like Mr. President and the Vice President take this vaccine, it will increase their confidence around the safety of the vaccines.
The National Agency for Food, Drugs and Administration Control, NAFDAC, also warns that falsified COVID-19 vaccines are already in the global market, hence the introduction of the track and trace technology.
We use a software called PIDCAMS that was developed by one of our staff. But it is not just the port inspection checking in, then we have to scan each of the boxes. But before we did the scanning, we requested for what is called master data from Serum Institute, so that we know that this batch 1 or batch 2, batch 3, if it goes to local government 1, 2, 3, we can trace from the airport, the cold store of MPHCDA, we can trace that vaccine to the patient.
In spite of the vaccine arrival, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 stresses the need for increased investment in the health sector.
We have at least 2 vaccine candidates in Nigeria, but they need a lot of resources to go through the clinical trial phases. The trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So we're trying to look for the resources to support them in doing that. And until that is done, which will take at least a year, we are not yet directly going to be in that game. We have a vaccine production company called BioVaccines Nigeria Limited, owned 49% by the federal government, which is looking to partner with other vaccine producers and perhaps produce under license here if the technology transfer agreement or discussions go through.
We've put into our health security infrastructure for the first time in decades. We cannot let this go because we have to continue this work.
From surveys conducted by the PTF, 50% of Nigerians have indicated willingness to be vaccinated, while only 25% are still hesitant. From the Presidential Villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And it's not the government alone that is intensifying efforts on the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The Nigerian military is also ramping up its testing centers with the activation of another in Lagos. Located at the 68th Nigerian Army Reference Hospital, Yaba, the new center uses an open platform to test for COVID-19. While the PCR testing laboratory will boost testing for personnel and their family members, it is also expected to complement the efforts of the Lagos State government in tackling the effects of the pandemic.
It's an additional COVID-19 testing center being activated at the 68th Army Reference Hospital in Yaba, Lagos. The platform uses the light cycler to test for COVID-19 and has a capacity of 96 samples per load. With representatives of the Honorable Minister of Defense, Chief of Defense Staff on the ground, the Director General Minister of Defense Health Implementation Program seizes the opportunity to speak on the features and imports of the laboratory.
Considering the population of our military and the geographical distribution, the present 4 laboratories in the military are inadequate. We are here this morning to increase the testing capacity of the armed forces of Nigeria using the light cycler PCR machine.
The center is a joint effort by the Ministry of Defense, Defense Headquarters, and the United States Army Medical Research Directorate. The partners expect effective and efficient deployment of the facility.
We've seen variants come into the country. The UK variant that people have heard about. Between November and January, there were 29 cases identified in 6 different states. There's a new mutation specific to Nigeria that we don't understand if it has implications or not. We don't know if there's a South Africa variant circulating in the country. So there's still need for testing of people, and there's still need to forge forward to combat the disease.
The activation of this lab will further complement the wonderful job being done by the Lagos State government. More importantly, it will be of immense use in supporting the 68th Nigerian Army Reference Hospital Yaba Isolation Treatment Center. military formations, including troops, their families, and the general civilian populace in Lagos and environ will benefit from this laboratory.
With the COVID-19 virus still very active around the world, the military finds it important to expand its testing facility. This appears a worthy initiative that should be replicated in more areas across the country. Chris Elems, Channels Television News.
There's still some insincerity hindering the fight against the spread of COVID-19, one of which is brought to light with the arrest of 5 suspected fake COVID-19 certificate holders at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos, today. 2 other persons are currently at large. Police says the suspects major in selling fake COVID-19 negative results to unsuspecting travelers within the international wing of the airport. The Commissioner of Police Airport Command, Mr. Bature Umar, said they were arrested February 19th after a United Kingdom-bound passenger was defrauded of the sum of 50,000 naira for COVID-19 tests. The passenger was later denied boarding by the British Airways. In the aftermath of the event, the victim raised an alarm which led to the arrest of 4 suspects. In the meantime, the federal government has extended the stay-at-home directive for all public servants on grade level 12 and below till the end of March. According to the head of service of the Federation, the extension is in adherence to the protocols of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. The stay-at-home directive, which was initially given by the federal government in March last year, was renewed in December 2020 as a measure to curb the spread of the virus. A concerned group of Nigerians under the aegis of the Alliance on Surviving COVID-19 and Beyond, ASCAP, say they'll launch a nationwide campaign to demand that government ensures the security and welfare of the people. The body, which had representation from the coalition of northern groups, the National Youth Democratic Association, and a cross-section of academics and intellectuals as well as activists, stated that insecurity in Nigeria has become routine and endemic, posing a huge threat to the country and her people. A communique signed by the interim chair of ASCAP and senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Femi Falana, recommends that policing must be decentralized and policing authorities devolved to ensure establishment of policing jurisdictions at national and subnational levels. The group adds that an implementation plan for the Police Act 2020 must be put in place immediately, with the Nigeria Police Council inaugurated and its meeting convened immediately to discuss the internal security and policing challenges facing the country. They also recommend the adoption of socio-economic policy options such as compensating victims of violent crime, establishment of ombudsmen, and empowering them to carry out oversight of policing and law. Retooling of states to ensure the prioritization of human security, devolving more powers and authority to subnational levels of government, speeding up the NIMC process and the various personal data collection management systems across the country, including the BVN, SIM card registration data, birth registration process, driver's licensing data, and others should be integrated. Now, governors of the northeast states have adopted community policing as an option to tackle the security challenges ravaging the region. They're also adopting the institution of a sub-regional security outfit. This was contained in a 10-point communique issued shortly after a closed meeting of the governors in Bauchi and read by the Adamawa State Governor Umaru Fintiri, who is the deputy chairman of the Northeast Governors Forum. The governors believe that a regional security outfit will complement efforts of the military and other security agencies in combating insurgency and other crimes facing the zone. Other resolutions reached are centered on the economic development and improving the education sector.
The Forum appreciates the reinforced efforts in the fight against insurgency and other forms of criminalities in the sub-region. However, it strongly feels the need for community policing and sub-regional security outfit to complement the efforts of the military and other federal security agencies in addressing these challenges. The forum deliberated extensively on the Mambila hydroelectric power project and noted with dismay that the project, as important as it is to Nigeria and the Northeast sub-region, is only existing on paper, but not in reality. Even the project has not commenced. The forum therefore calls on the federal government to accord the project the desired seriousness because of its anticipated impact in turning around the fortunes of the sub-region and the country at large. The forum notes the need to be aggressive in repositioning education in the sub-region and resolve to form the Northeast Council on Education with the mandate to improve quality and performance of students, set up peer review, and collect data to drive decision-making on education, including performance, admissions, regulatory framework, human resource management, and digitalization, among others.
In part two, after the break, the Nigerian Immigration Service gets President Buhari's order to step up protection of the nation's entry points. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Fight against COVID-19 pandemic enters new phase as the country begins mass vaccination of its citizens tomorrow. Nigerian governors agree to take COVID-19 vaccine as President Buhari and Vice President Osinbajo are to be inoculated publicly on Saturday. Governors of the Northeast states resolved to adopt community policing as part of measures to tackle current security challenges in the region. An Italian government evokes European Union regulation blocks export of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine shipment to Australia. Staying with security, President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the Nigerian Immigration Service to tighten security around the nation's borders. The president gave this charge at the virtual commissioning of the technology and data building of the Nigerian Immigration Service in the nation's capital. The President Buhari also wants security agencies to raise the bar in protecting lives and property.
Officers, men and top management of the Nigerian Immigration Service are gathered here for the official commissioning of the technology and data building. President Muhammadu Buhari joins the ceremony virtually. In attendance are the Ministers of Interior, Information, Foreign, Police and Women Affairs, as well as past heads of the service, among others.
It gives me much pleasure.
President Buhari advises the Immigration Service to work with international security agencies to safeguard the borders.
I urge you to actively collaborate with international security organizations like the Interpol in safeguarding our borders. Remember that a safe border is a prerequisite for a safe nation.
The Minister of Interior assures Nigerians that the solution to insecurities in the country is in sight.
The security challenges we face at the moment are temporary and surmountable, and we are addressing them with vigor. Though the concerns are shared, but there is no need to despair. We are doing everything possible to tackle the security challenges facing our borders, land, sea, and air. The Nigerian Immigration Service has deployed adequate security in our air border, but our land borders remain the weakest link, I must admit.
The Controller General of Immigration, Mohammed Babandede, speaks on the significance of the technology building.
With this edifice, we are able to deploy e-border capability for enhanced border security and also harness mobility data available to us in the virtual space, application for facilities, port control, residency and registration of migrants.
Then it's time for the commissioning and the Minister of Interior cut the tape on behalf of President Muhammadu Buhari.
Nigerians deserving of immigration service, border management operations.
To many present at this gathering, this technology and data building couldn't have come at a better time, as it would help in close monitoring of both local and transnational criminal activities, nipping it in the bud.
The president is also insisting that Nigeria's unity is not negotiable, and so he is promising a more secure, safe and prosperous nation in the days ahead. President Buhari's message is conveyed by the governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello, after he met with President Buhari at the State House to brief him on the suspension of the strike to block supply of foodstuffs and cattle to the south. He told State House correspondents today that he believes the president will deliver on his promise to secure the nation.
Mr. President expressed concern also over the insecurity in the land. As the Commander-in-Chief, he has assured each and every one of us, based on his security meeting yesterday, that Nigeria is going to face security. It's going to be secured, it's going to be safe, it's going to be prosperous. And I believe in him 100%. He urged each and every one of us to continue to go about our lawful businesses in the country, that Nigeria's unity is unnegotiable. Nigeria must be united, Nigeria must be peaceful, and Nigeria must be prosperous.
Staying with security matters, Governor Samuel Ortom of Benue State has commended President Muhammadu Buhari for the shoot-at-sight order given to security agencies against anyone bearing arms illegally, noting that his cry for help has finally received attention. Governor Ortom made the call when he received the chairman of the Governing Council of the Universal Basic Education Commission, Abuja, Professor Adamu Usman. The governor also appealed for special intervention to rebuild schools destroyed by herdsmen attacks in the state.
I want to commend Mr. President for the order that I heard he has already given that any Nigerian or non-Nigerian with AK-47 should be shot. They find you going about with AK-47. You should be dealt with. And I think that is the way to go. That is what we were expecting. And that is why I wrote to Mr. President. And that is why I was criticizing that there should be no sacred cow in this country. What is good for the goose is also good for the gander. And so everyone should be the same. That is all. Equity, fairness, and justice. Once that is done, we have no problem. So I commend Mr. President. You must be decisive, and that was why I say you should wake up before it is late. Allowing foreign Fulani herdsmen to come and destroy our country.
Meanwhile, in Anambra State, the governor, Willie Obiano, has reiterated his commitment to continue to secure the lives and property of the people of Anambra, in line with the promise he made when he assumed office on March 17, 2014. The governor therefore announced the procurement of over 500 vehicles for all security agencies in the state, just as he noted that arms-bearing itinerant herdsmen in Anambra will no longer be tolerated.
Security agencies, vigilante operatives, traditional rulers are present here at the Professor Dora Akunyili Women Development Center in Awka, the Anambra State capital, for a security meeting aimed at finding ways to preserve peace and minimize harm in the state. One of the issues of concern is the farmer herder crisis, as well as child abduction.
Most of our people cannot go to farm anymore. Then having said this, we have to talk about the constant kidnapping and abduction of children under age. Because most of the children now, the people from kindergarten, most of them are being kidnapped, that we lose them. So we need something to be done.
For the police, security is a collective duty, and so a continuous interface is necessary.
The police and the lead agency in that hold a constructive
that are banned because of this. In Anambra, the law of some kind of sin.
Governor Willie Obiano warns arms-bearing itinerant herders to desist from such acts, as anyone caught will be treated as a criminal.
We have found out that the people that didn't pay compensation were the itinerant ones. They are passing by. They don't belong here. They don't live here. I also heard about AK-47. That is any national with AK-47 in Anambra has to be put down. We do not tolerate carrying of arms by herdsmen in Anambra here.
The governor also seized the opportunity to caution the people against incessant land tussles, while asking traditional rulers to involve youth in their cabinets, as he believes this will help curb social vices in the state.
Let's go over to our Abuja studios where Linda Kigwe has some more stories. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Millicent. Welcome to Abuja. The chairman of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Brigadier General Mohammed Buba Marwa, says the NDLEA was comatose when he took over the leadership of the agency in January this year. General Marwa made the remark during a visit to the Senate President in Abuja, where he also laments that the morale of staff in the NDLEA is the weakest he has ever seen in the paramilitary organization. He's seeking the urgent intervention of the National Assembly for increased funding to the agency to enable it fight the war on drugs, as he warns that Nigeria is at siege from drug abuse.
When I took over about 6 or 7 weeks back, I found the agency comatose. Comatose, and I would not like to go into too much detail because of the press, and this is an agency that we need to demonstrate readiness. Unfortunately, the state of readiness is very, very weak. The morale, above all, is the weakest that I've ever met in any paramilitary institution. Almost every single staff is owed either a DTA allowance or his allowance for prosecution, the movement, to and fro, court processes, or transfer, traveling. There's over 4 billion naira owed just for the staff and death benefits. So morale is so low, there's stagnation, the promotions, postings, because there's no money. First is we need urgent intervention to support us. The agency is in dire need of funding, and that is completely not provided for to fight this war.
When the news at 10 returns, we have more stories from the National Assembly. Plus, oil prices jumped by more than 5% as OPEC votes to maintain current crude output policy till April. That's in business news. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10, live from Abuja. The National Assembly is considering amending the Act establishing Galaxy Backbone to, among other things, impress ministries, departments and agencies to patronize the company and pay for services it provides. This follows a joint oversight visit by the National Assembly Committees on ICT and Cybersecurity to the company, whose mandate is to provide internet connectivity and other information and communication technology infrastructure services for government agencies. The committees expressed concern over the low patronage and non-payment by government agencies for services provided by Galaxy Backbone, which has affected the revenue generation capacity of the company. In continuation of the trial of the chairman of a defunct pension reform task team, a defense witness, Ngozika Ihoma, has told a federal high court sitting in Abuja that a suspended chairman of Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Mr. Ibrahim Magu, allegedly mismanaged 222 properties recovered by the pension reform task team. Mr. Ihoma, who was a consultant to the Pension Reform Task Team, says out of the 222 choice properties handed over to the EFCC, Mr. Magu sold a property situated at number 42 Ghana Street, Maitama, originally valued at 6 billion naira in 2011, allegedly to Mr. Femi Falano for 1 billion naira in 2015. The witness further told the court that the Pension Reform Task Team, under the leadership of Mr. Abdulrasheed Maina, gave intelligence report in 2013 to ICPC on plans to move 35 billion naira out of the head of service pension office under the interim management committee of Mrs. Winifred Oyoita, who later became the head of service of the Federation. Mr. Ihoma insists that the trial of Mr. Abdulrasheed Maina amounts to a persecution because he is the only member of the defunct Pension Reform Task Team that is being prosecuted despite the huge financial recoveries made for the federal government. The trial judge, Justice Okonabang, after listening to the testimony of the witness, adjourned the case to March the 5th for cross-examination of the witness. Meanwhile, a federal high court sitting in Lagos has set aside its order of interim forfeiture against two properties of former Senate President Bukola Saraki. Justice Mohammed Liman also dismissed an application by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission seeking a final forfeiture of the properties located at 17 and 17A McDonald Road, Ikoyi, Lagos, to the federal government. In his judgment, Justice Liman held that the essence of an interim order of forfeiture is to preserve the property from being dissipated by the suspect, and the burden is on the applicant, that is the EFCC, to satisfy the court that the property is a proceed of unlawful or illegal activity under the corruption laws. The court, however, found that the EFCC had in its affidavit in support of its application for final forfeiture stated that the properties sought to be forfeited were purchased with a personal loan Senator Saraki obtained from Guarantee Trust Bank. The court agreed with the counsel to the former Senate President Kehinde Ogunwumiju that the burden of proof for final forfeiture is on the preponderance of evidence and that the EFCC had failed to show that the monies used to purchase the property were from the Kwara State Government House account. In the final analysis, the court held that the EFCC failed to prove that it was entitled to the relief of final forfeiture of the properties. Justice Liman accordingly dismissed the application and vacated the interim forfeiture order it made on October 21st, 2019. And that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Millicent.
Thanks, Linda. And away from the courts, the Rivers State government has inaugurated a new administrative building and an ultra-modern clinic at the Government House, Port Harcourt, to enhance efficiency in public service administration in Rivers State. The clinic is designed to offer a world-class medical service, while the administrative building is to provide office accommodation for Government House staff and journalists covering Government House activities. The projects were commissioned by the former President of Senate, Bukola Saraki.
Lighted up for aesthetic night vision is a reconstructed complex carved out of a section of the River State Government House, Port Harcourt, to provide comfort for administrative staff. Transformed from dilapidated structures and poorly maintained landscaping, the new clinic and administrative building is set to be of world-class standard, which the state says will bring an end to foreign medical tourism.
This particular Government House clinic house, as we speak to you, 6 wings. Of the 6 wings, the first wing contains an endoscopy area where you have special fiber optic techniques, the latest fiber optic techniques, to investigate for gastroscopy, colonoscopy, etc.
Many things they change. The special guest at this event is the former President of Senate, Dr. Bukola Saraki, who describes the facilities, especially the clinic, as one of the best of its kind.
healthcare is very, very important in reduction of poverty. In infant mortality, maternal mortality, it has to do with healthcare. So let me commend your vision in putting through this kind of project. But what I saw the other day when I peeped in, I know definitely that what we have here is something for us to be proud, not only in Rivers, but in Nigeria, but in the entire African continent.
For Governor Nyesom Wike, the event presents him an opportunity to reflect on the challenges of governance in the state, and he says he has not disappointed residents.
People have this impression that when somebody goes for second tenure, it's for him to go and chop money. I told you, not for us. We are going to work as if this is our first tenure. And that's what we are doing. We are here to commission this project. I'm so happy about it.
I hereby, with this great honor, commission this medical center for the service of the people of Rivers State and give glory to Almighty God.
There is more to the Government House Clinic than just a regular health facility, as it has a computerized integrated system which is also designed to provide telemedicine at an affordable charge.
Residents of Imo State along the Obinze, Umuakane and other communities along the Imo Rivers Link Road would soon start to enjoy the road. That's the promise of the Interim Administrator of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, during inspection of some projects in the state. He also visited Governor Hope Uzodimma, who is asking for attitudinal change among residents in the region.
Interim Administrator of the Niger Delta Development Commission, Mr. Effiong Akwa, and some management staff arrive in Imo State. It's a part of the tour of the Niger Delta region and a visit to members of the Presidential Advisory Committee. While the NDDC boss calls for unity of purpose to develop the region, Governor Hope Uzodimma seeks an overhaul of how things are done.
I advise citizens from oil-producing states some kind of attitudinal change, remove violence from our system, bring in intellectual arguments and discussions to prevail, and then impact positively on the people. Above all, be more patriotic in the way and manner we go about our things. So that way, NDDC will be further encouraged to intervene more and stimulate both economic and social activities in the region.
The visit to stakeholders, particularly the members of the PAC, Presidential Advisory Committee of NDDC, is yielding fruit. You can hear from the governor. He's advising us to continue with the good work. He's appreciative of the offer that we have made to the state and is ready to partner with us.
The Commission goes ahead to donate 4 waste disposal trucks to the state government.
I have the privilege and honor to physically hand over.
Leaving here, the Commission moves around to inspect some of the ongoing projects in Imo State. The Interim Administrator underscores the importance of the Imo Rivers Link Road as well as the Obinze-Umuakane Road projects, asking the contractor back to site.
We believe that there is no problem that has no solution. Problem of this road, as far as I'm concerned, has a solution. Part of the solution is to dialogue, to engage the contractor, also engage the other issues, other areas of contention, those contending with him on this should be resolved so that the people can have benefit of having an interventionist agency around.
The Imo State Office of the Commission is next on the lineup of inspection. Mr. Akwa moves around the facility with a charge to staff in the office to cultivate maintenance culture.
Let's bring you some business news now. Here's Anne Waldo.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Millicent. Hello and welcome to Business News. Let's begin tonight with oil prices. It has jumped
higher by more than 5% today, after OPEC and its oil-producing allies agreed to keep production largely steady till the month of April. At the meeting of its Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee, OPEC ministers commended Saudi Arabia for extending an additional voluntary adjustment of 1 million barrels per day of crude output till next month, which of course demonstrates its flexible leadership and preemptive approach to rebalancing the oil market. The ministers also thanked Nigeria for achieving full conformity in January 2021 and compensating its entire overproduced volumes, and notes that OPEC and non-OPEC countries had withheld 2.3 billion barrels of oil since April 2020 to the end of January this year. The next meeting of the JMMC and OPEC Plus ministers is scheduled for March the 31st and April the 1st. The Managing Director of the Bank of Industry, Mr. Olukayode Ekpitan, is promising cooperation with development finance institutions to ensure adequate funding for the real sector. At a meeting with members of the Association of Nigerian Development Finance Institutions in Abuja, Mr. Ekpitan also emphasized the partnership has become necessary at a time when the federal government is seeking ways of achieving development in all sectors.
Top government officials from the nation's development finance institutions from the federal and state levels under the aegis of the Association of Nigerian Development Finance Institutions at a meeting with the management of the Bank of Industry.
It was a good suggestion by the technical.
A clear mandate of this meeting is to exchange ideas on how to explore areas of investments and financing and tapping into government's various development policy for sustained development across the country.
We can raise a common voice, of the DFIs to influence CBS circulars and guidelines, particularly as it pertains to our operations. Because most of those circulars, they just consider commercial banks. Some of them affect us negatively. We can speak in one voice on matters of common interest. We can encourage mutual assistance and investment cooperation among the DFIs. We can invest in training and development of member organizations.
One after the other, representatives of the investments and property development companies explains some of the challenges confronted with at the state level, including infrastructure and prompt financing of the real sector.
When you're bringing products and programs to states, you make sure that the state development finance institution is carried along so that we are on board. Then in terms of technical support, there are some, you have better capacity in terms of training, in terms of manpower, and then in terms of opportunities. Now, if you don't spread it down, it will never cascade.
At the end of the meeting, members of the association speak on their expectations going forward and how development finance is influencing trade.
We are going downstream to facilitate bigger participation by SMEs by now funding those who supply the exporters.
We think very soon we will see new efforts that will bring to bear on the country developments.
Although the nation's development finance sector has relatively performed well in the last few decades, many believe there is still room for improvement. Hopefully, resolutions reached at the meeting will translate into development for the people.
Now let's check out performance at the local equities market. It weakened further at the close of business today. Investors' appetite is still tilting towards the fixed income market. Ini John Mekwa has the details.
Thank you so much and welcome to the Stock Market Report. The banking sector, which was quiet yesterday, finally made some noise today, although that was responsible for today's losses, leaving the bear in the market. Well, apart from the banking sector, others also ended negative, except for industrial goods, which added almost 0.2% after Lafarge saw a 3.59 increase. The all-share index is still in the 39,000 psychological level as it fell 0.40% at the end of trading. Volume value deals traded today were higher compared to midweek session, as we saw about 493 million units worth 4.72 billion naira change hands in over 5,000 deals. Universal Insurance, Zenith Bank, FBN Holdings were the most sought after stocks for the day. Well, as the market awaits more earnings, investors are advised to take position in fundamentally justified stocks. That's the stock market report. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
Thank you, Ini. It's also not looking good for major markets around the world, but let's find out how they all ended at the close of business. Well, let's see how tomorrow turns out. But that's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. It's back to you, Millicent.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Anne. Italy has blocked the deployment of 250,000 doses of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine to Australia. The vaccines were produced at an AstraZeneca facility in Italy, which has become the first EU country to use the bloc's new regulations, allowing exports to be stopped if the company providing the vaccines has failed to meet its obligations to the EU. AstraZeneca is on track to provide only 40% of the agreed supply to member states in the first 3 months of the year. It has cited production problems for the shortfall. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Crowds have gathered in Myanmar for the funeral of a 19-year-old woman who was shot dead during anti-coup protests on Wednesday. Tributes have flooded into social media for Kayal Sin, known as Angel, with many calling her a hero. Since the 1st of February military coup, Myanmar has been gripped by protests demanding the release of detained elected leaders. More than 54 people have died since the protests began, according to the UN Human Rights Office, although other reports put the figure much higher.
We're also appalled at the documented attacks against emergency medical staff and ambulances.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has called on security forces to halt their vicious crackdown on peaceful protesters. The House of Representatives has cancelled Thursday's session at the US Capitol in Washington in response to a possible plot to breach the building. The move was prompted by intelligence that a militia group planned an attack for March the 4th. The day conspiracy theorist group QAnon believes Donald Trump will return for a second term. The Senate will continue with its agenda and security has been ramped up. A mob loyal to Mr. Trump stormed the Congress building in January. That attack came as lawmakers were inside moving to certify Democrat Joe Biden's election victory. The riots saw 5 people lose their lives. Northern Irish loyalist paramilitary groups have told British Prime Minister Boris Johnson they are temporarily withdrawing support for the 1998 peace agreement due to concerns over the Brexit deal. While the groups pledged peaceful and democratic opposition to the deal, such a stark warning increases the pressure on Boris Johnson, his Irish counterpart Michael Martin and the European Union over Brexit. Northern Ireland's 1998 peace deal, known as the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement, ended 3 decades of violence between mostly Catholic nationalists fighting for a united Ireland and unionists who want Northern Ireland to stay part of the United Kingdom. The UN's Human Rights Commissioner has called on Ethiopia to allow independent experts into the country to investigate continuing violations that may amount to war crimes in the Tigray region.
60 million people.
Michelle Bachelet said she had received distressing reports of killings, rape, destruction and looting. The UN says the Ethiopian and Eritrean armed forces, the Tigray's People's Liberation Front and Amhara regional forces are all implicated. A statement said her office had corroborated information about indiscriminate shelling in 3 towns and reports of grave human rights violations and abuses, including mass killings in Axum by Eritrean armed forces. Pope Francis has given a message of hope to his brothers and sisters in Iraq ahead of his historic but also risky trip to the country. Francis, who is due to start the 4-day whirlwind trip in Baghdad on Friday, said he was coming as a pilgrim to implore forgiveness and reconciliation from the Lord after years of war and terrorism. Iraq's minority Christian community has been devastated by wars and repression by Islamic State insurgents. During the trip, Francis will visit the former Islamic State stronghold of Mosul. 10 former members of the Colombian guerrilla group FARC have been killed and 3 have been captured during a bombing in the southeastern Guaviare province. In a joint operation of military and police forces, 13 members of FARC dissidents were neutralized, 10 of them killed and 3 captured. That's according to the Ministry of Defense. Former FARC guerrillas who reject the 2016 deal with the state have become a security threat in Colombia, accused of murdering human rights activists, producing cocaine and taking part in illegal mining. Dramatic footage now of one of SpaceX's prototype rockets landing before exploding in what was thought to be connected to a methane leak. The rocket managed to touch down in contrast to its predecessors, which all crashed into the ground. But when the next generation space vehicle touched down on its legs, a fire developed around its base, and 8 minutes later the rocket blew itself apart on the landing pad. Despite this, SpaceX will be hugely encouraged by the test. The prototype successfully executed its in-flight maneuvers and for the first time made a reasonably soft landing. And finally, a Dutch inventor is testing a possible new way to screen for coronavirus infections that involves having a person walk into an airlocked cabin and screaming. A person steps into the booth and then begins to scream or yell or sing. According to the inventor, yelling and screaming allows the spread of tens of thousands of particles containing coronavirus if a person is infected. These particles are then collected, dried and measured by the machine. According to the inventor, the device could be used as a useful screening tool outside concerts, airports, schools or offices. And that's your international news around the world in 5. And now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Hello and welcome to Sports News. We begin with football, where the hopes of the president of the Nigeria Football Federation, Mr. Amaju Pinnick, to be elected into the FIFA Council has received a boost as the federal government has renewed its commitment to support his candidacy at next week's Confederation of African Football elections in Rabat, Morocco. The permanent secretary to the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports, Mr. Nebolisa Nako, says Mr. Amaju's ambition will further reposition Nigeria on the global football map, as his election will have a positive impact on African football. He says his triumph in the election will follow in the steps of illustrious compatriots such as Dr. Akumi Adesina, who was re-elected as president of the Africa Development Bank, and Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the first female African DG of the World Trade Organization in recent times. In the English Premier League, Dele Alli delivered on his first Premier League start since the opening day of the season, as Tottenham edged out Fulham 1-0, while Everton moved into the top 4 as they were also 1-0 winners over West Brom earlier today. Ali scored his first league goal for just short of a year as his effort deflected off Tosin Adarabioyo into his own net at Craven Cottage. Scott Parker's men had a goal harshly disallowed for a handball by Mario Lemina before Josh Maja fired home, but Tottenham held out to close to within 4 points of the top 4. In 8th, Everton edged into the top 4 thanks to the informed Richarlison and third consecutive win with a clean sheet. And that's it on Sports News. Millicent, back to you.
Thank you, Lumide. And the main news again. Nigeria's fight against COVID-19 pandemic entered a new phase today as the country announced readiness to begin mass vaccination of its citizens from tomorrow. Healthcare workers, other frontline officers will be first to be inoculated Friday, while President Buhari and Vice President Oshibajo are to be vaccinated publicly on Saturday. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Mwaka. Have a good night. Stay safe.